All right, and we are live. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Thought I would sit down and do a video for you guys and gals. A couple things here up front. Let me link my Facebook page. If you guys will please follow me there, it'd be greatly appreciated. All right, since I did an arm day today, I think that's a good time to cover this topic of when does it make sense to have an actual arm day, like I have. And I think it can make sense if your arms are legitimately a weak link. Like in my case, they've improved. But I mean, we have to be fair. In addition to getting the waistline tighter, my arms are my weakest link. Right? My biceps and stuff need work. Though you guys have seen the pictures I put up today, we can see I am making gains once you see I'm pumped and everything with those forearm poses I did in the middle of that workout. So again, kind of showing that things like the arm day do help. That doesn't mean that you don't always do them on other days. And that's kind of the point I've come to when it comes to weak point training as we split our training up, just like we oftentimes will throw weak point training in for powerlifting, right? We'll sometimes have days dedicated to our weakest point in a lift or our weakest exercise, right? And it's the same thing when you're chasing muscle physique and things like that. It can make sense to have a day dedicated to that. Again, as long as your recovery can handle it, as long as your joints can handle it. But again, this is where you balance those things out. But that's the case where it makes sense. So in the case of, say, me, for example, I have one day dedicated to each thing, but I have a second separate day to my weak links. And I think if you're going to run a 4 or 5 day split, sometimes it's a good idea to put those things on their own day. Yeah, right. Because we don't generally need to train most things twice a week. We really don't. The evidence doesn't suggest that. But your weak links, they may benefit from it. Again, as long as you can do so in a way that doesn't cause overuse. Problem with something like, say, benching twice a week is that it can beat your shoulders up. I kind of noticed this when I bench twice a week. Or squatting twice a week. As you get stronger, you have to be careful of some of those big movements. But you can certainly do smaller exercises on a second day that carry over to those. So, for example, let's say your chest really is a weak link and you need a separate chest day. Well, you might not want to do your big heavy barbell work on that second day. It's where it might make sense to come in, do a bunch of dumbbell pressing or to come in and do some flies and other isolation stuff for your chest pullovers, things that are not going to necessarily hit your joints the same way. Because that's the one problem we have with a lot of the bigger exercises is that, and this is one reason that I've said for a lot of older lifters, training things only once a week makes a lot of sense because those big movements can beat you up if done too frequently. That's the reason so many power lifters are beat up before they're 40 who run the high frequency type training, the high specificity, the guys who are benching 2, 3, 4 times a week. How many of them can't bench anymore once they reach 40 plus? It's really common, right? I mean, take Candido, for example, perfect example of a guy who pushed a really high frequency powerlifting and it beat him into the ground. Okay? Beat him into the ground. He's no longer competitive in his 40, as he's approaching 40 or plus. I'm not even sure if he reached 40 yet because that's what happens. And we know that that's what happens, right? We know that's what happens. Not that it doesn't work. And oftentimes it can be the same with our other body part stuff. Again, if you're beating it into the ground, you're beating the joints and things into the ground, it's problematic. But can you come in and take a weak point like that and do very careful pump work, even with progressive overload, add more volume and be careful of things? Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can make sense to do so. Right. And so it can be the same with an arm day, but that arm day could be synonymous for any other day. I mean, it could literally be a calf day. If your calves needed the most work, having a second day just for your calves. You come in and work the calves from all angles, right? Multiple angles and just pump them up. Okay, remember him down here looking much better physique-wise in 2024, JB. Thank you. And we're going to do better in 2025. I mean, we're making almost weekly progress right now. Like people have noticed that, or they're like, I come back every month and you look quite a bit different month to month. So we're just improving. And I'm just going to keep writing that out, right? I'm just going to keep rolling forward with it. But I'm still incorporating certain elements of my powerlifting. I still have a pretty good bench, have a pretty good deadlift. I'm going to bring my squat back up because why not, right? Guy whose name I can't pronounce because the letter says, hey guys, well, how you doing? Enoch. We'll just call you Enoch. All right. So, we got any questions, guys? There's quite a few people watching, a couple people commenting. Is there a big difference in doing bent over rows supinated versus pronated? Yeah, there's a significant difference, Nick. Obviously, the amount of bicep recruitment, but the thing that I would point out. So I assume you said bent over row. So again, you're not talking about a Pendlay row. You're not talking about a barbell row. You're talking about the bent over while holding it, right? So, yeah, it's going to be some different activation overall. Obviously, more bicep. The thing is, like, I personally can do more weight. I'm stronger. Like, I can take any given weight with a barbell row, and if I do a strict supine row, I can do a couple more reps with it. But the other thing to think about, it is some potential risk for your biceps if you're not careful, right? Right? So, but yeah, the activation is going to be a little bit different in terms of ratios of upper back, lat, stuff like that. Right? How long should I go without carbs safely? You should never go completely without carbs, because to go without carbs, you would have to cut all vegetables and stuff out. You can go fairly low carb. I would never say go zero carb, ever for any reason. Even a medical keto diet prescribed for medical purposes isn't zero carb. But as far as lower carbs go, if your diet is balanced and healthy, there's no reason you can't do it for years on end. Says, are you eating low carb and high protein in this winter? Yeah, you see my meals, guys. I linked the Facebook page. I put pictures of my food, my shopping, everything up. Nick says, cool, thanks. Is a supine grip easier on your shoulders as well? I don't know about that. Are rows really hard on your shoulders? I've never felt rows hard on my shoulders at all. So it seems a rather strange thing. I personally have never felt any stress on my shoulders on a row. So I don't know, maybe you're doing something different with them. And I go back and forth between supine and pronated. Although I could make the case for, like, for example, I think this coming week I'm going to try to strap up and do bent over. And that way I don't have to be quite as strict. I want to mess with that a little bit. And because then I'm getting really strict rows on my dumbbell rows and on my seal rows. But in that case, I don't know that I would want to say do a supine grip in that case, because there is a higher risk of bicep rupture, right? If you're going to use any body English. So in that case, I would absolutely avoid it. Right. I would point that out. So a supine grip row is only for people who are extremely strict. Because again, risking the bicep tear. And a lot of times people are trying to get more bicep work. You could just do some curls. Okay. And they're going to still do a better job than that row is. Remember says, happy holidays and blessings. Thank you. Happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas. Is it coming up? We're almost there. We're almost there. All right. So what else we have, guys? We got a few good questions here, then it slowed down. Views are a little slow today. Oh, I only asked because I saw you incorporating them. Yeah, I use them off and on. Hey, Riff, I'm going to kind of quit answering most of your stuff because it's gotten redundant, and we still have no idea what you look like or what your lifts look like. So no one can answer your questions. You ask too many specific questions that we don't have answers to, because no one has seen your lifts. No one knows what your physique looks like. We don't have any, so no one can answer any of the questions that you've asked at this point. And I feel like I've already, all right. How do I put this? I feel like I've given you all the answers you need, but you kind of didn't listen, right? So, it's like there's a point where the juice isn't worth the squeeze again. You give someone a bunch of advice and they just ignore it. Why would you do any further? Right? It's not beneficial. So no offense to you, Riff, but I'm not going to answer any more of your questions. I spent like 20 minutes answering them already in my life. And I can tell based on the questions you're asking, you didn't want to hear what I had to say. So a year from now, you're not going to be any better. And it's just that simple. If you're not going to take the advice I give and you keep saying the same things, then that's it. You're never going to improve. You're done. 2 years, maybe you'll get wiser and come back and go, you were right, and I did what you said. After 2 more years of no progress. Okay? I gave you the answers very politely and free, by the way. And I think that's the problem with free advice. People don't take it if it's free. If they don't pay for it, you can get the best advice in the world, and 50% of people will ignore it. They place no value on it. So sometimes it's better to charge someone $1 than to get free advice. Funny as that sounds. Bro says, I saw a video with Mike Rashid saying, train heavy for better results. Is that true? What do you mean? Bro, you got to be very, very specific. Should we be working on training heavier? Yes. Should we be doing lots of, I generally advocate doing both. I am a fan of doing a moderate to low amount of really, really heavy work, and then everything else being more hypertrophy oriented work, like 6+, 8+ reps, including stuff up to 12 and 15 and things, right? And I think that will produce for most people the best results. But in terms of heavier, saying heavy, do you mean should you be progressing? Yes, right? Absolutely. Overtraining? No, overtraining is not good. Overtraining makes you lose muscle, right? But keep in mind, I'm not going to hate on Mike. Mike doesn't seem to actually know what the word overtraining means historically, right? I think he bought into Megan's nonsense of the guy Megan years ago changed the meaning for certain segments of YouTube fitness. He took the word overtraining and just changed it completely away from what everyone understood it to mean. And a few people started pretending that it's like a positive thing, right? Whereas what overtraining actually is a medical syndrome that can be diagnosed. And if you are actually overtraining, sometimes you have to be hospitalized for it. You always lose muscle when overtraining. That happens pretty much every time. Best case scenario, you lose muscle. Worst case, you have to spend a few weeks in the hospital. Worst case, you get kidney damage. Like, it's a real thing. Like it is, again, it can be diagnosed by a doctor, like a sports physician. So, but they were using it as like Megan was any high frequency training, he was calling overtraining, which is, no, that's just called high frequency training. So again, people have done weird things with these words. So that might be where Mike is going with that. But then the point you're saying there, that doesn't sound like overtraining. So maybe you should define what he described as overtraining, because you just said heavy. So if heavier was better, then that would just mean we should all do nothing but power lifts and 1-rep maxes, right? Every lift so if heavier is always better is an objective statement, every single lift you do should be an all-out 100% 1-rep max, right? If you can even grind a second rep, it's not heavy enough because it's not as heavy as possible. I'm just saying, man, doing a 1-rep max on a tricep extension is going to get ugly real quick. So again, because I haven't seen the video, I'm not necessarily understanding what you're saying. But there should always be progressive overload present, right? Progressive overload is an important variable. So in other words, if you can do 100 pounds for 10 reps right now, you should be over time on that exercise working towards doing 150 pounds for 10 or 200 pounds for 10 or 300 pounds for 10, right? But if you can do it for 10 reps, is it lightweight? So, What is lightweight? You've seen me deadlift 500 pounds for 11 reps before on a set when I was at my strongest on rep work with it. So is that lightweight? I mean, if you can do more than 10 reps, it's not heavy, is it? If you can do clean reps with good form on an exercise for more than 10, does that constitute lightweight? Simonus says, let me get your other question. I didn't train for 2 weeks. I'm now sore for over 3 days. Should I train? No, go ahead and train again. The repeat bout effect will help it go away. You didn't train because you got sore because you detrained. Did you watch Gladiator 2? No. Did Gladiator really be that big like history says? What do you mean? I mean, we've got plenty of documentation on how gladiators, the Roman gladiators ate. We know what their diets looked like. We know what they looked like. They were usually a little fluffier. They wanted a little extra body fat on them for a lot of reasons. I mean, they weren't fat like we think of fat in America fat, but they were definitely softer. They wanted a layer of fat on them. But I haven't seen the movie to understand what you're asking. But were they bigger? They had a lot of muscle and a lot of fat. They had a fair amount of fat. They were probably all over 20% body fat. Because what they wanted was, number one, gladiators were expensive slaves. They were very valuable if they were good. So they wanted them to survive better. So they gave them some extra padding. Two, it made for a better spectacle because they could get cut and still it would look fantastic for the crowd, but with less damage to things like muscle tissue or organs, because the subcutaneous fat can end up being cut in the arena. It can make a great show. So they had multiple reasons for them for doing that. So they wanted them a little on the padded side. So they did overfeed them to do that. Right? But they obviously strength trained and did all their stuff in their training all the time. And so they had a fair amount of muscle to go with all of it. But they weren't going to be like what we would think of as bodybuilder big today because they didn't have PEDs and all this other stuff. They also didn't have 400 grams of protein a day and they weren't, pin and test and growth hormone. So, context. Right? But no, I actually haven't seen that movie. So I'm just trying to answer your question as a general question, in terms of historical accuracy and then some common sense. All right. What else we got, guys? It's cold in here still. I got to turn my heat on. I didn't turn the heat on. I don't have veins popping out like I do most of these in this cold today, like I did a couple days ago. Oh, man. Probably not a huge fan. I know how to tell if you're actually being honest. I can just go to your channel and see when you made it. All right. Oh. All right. So what else we got here, guys? Hopefully we'll get a few more people in. If we do, we'll get some good questions. Otherwise, we're not that worried about it. Keeping some lives flowing. Yeah. People can argue what I do these days is more boring, but it's all educational. I mean, it's the question comes with a fitness channel. Are we here to educate people or are we here to entertain you? I'm here to help people. Here to help people. You want to be entertained, you go watch a sitcom. Do you take caffeine pre-workout? How do you define take caffeine? You're asking me, have I ever bought caffeine pills? Or are you asking me, do I drink coffee? Because I don't believe in taking pre-workouts. I've always been extremely anti-pre-workout. Like as far as supplements go, I think they're an absolute scam. I'm not a fan. So there's that. But as far as coffee goes, I love coffee. So I drink black coffee in the mornings, right? That's actually the only thing I have before training. I have black coffee. Coffee. I drink coffee, right? But I don't buy products with added caffeine. I drink coffee. But I drink coffee. It's not even about training. I would drink coffee if I wasn't training. Okay. Are you watching the Texas? No, I'm not watching right now. No. No. I don't have time, man. I got other stuff. Like again, this is even work. Trying to stay busy. How would you structure a whaling? What do you mean whaling with sandbag workouts, walking for time? How long? Depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, sandbags is not going to be like a vest carry to where you're going to go for 20, 30, 40 minutes an hour. Something like sandbags, I would probably just do it in rotations, right? Take sandbags that you can carry for about a minute, take a minute on, a minute off, right? But how much time, it depends on how much conditioning you want. It's GPP is something you can build up over time, right? That's kind of the whole point. I'm asking because the WADA removed caffeine from the doping list, so it's okay. Simonus, that's not necessarily how it works. You're asking is caffeine documented to be an ergonomic aid? Yes. Are you asking if it's an ergonomic aid that appears to necessarily benefit training stimulus? No, even pre-workouts that have been banned haven't been found to actually cause more muscle growth due to the better workouts. So as far as that goes, not necessarily, but is caffeine an actual mildly effective PED itself? Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Of course. But it's also, they don't ban all caffeine. It's not like you can't drink coffee. They ban people taking large amounts. So they have basically they test blood levels of caffeine to see how high it is. So you're not gonna. It's like you're not gonna drink enough coffee to probably fail that. But if you're taking a bunch of caffeine pills, possibly, right? Thoughts on executing compound lifts quickly for athletic ability rather than slower. Well, that's where we get into dynamic effort work. Hey, Jamil, I'm going to politely ask you not to ask me about my personal life one time, and we'll move on. All right. So Joe Van, I mean, a perfect example. So let's talk about speed stuff. So what did you see me do on Friday in the vlog? I did speed box squats with chains, right? Using a relatively lightweight for speed. Okay, because I did them with only 235 plus 50 pounds of chains. So again, chasing compensatory acceleration on a movement like that, absolutely. Right. So Jova, I think absolutely. But I mean, you have to be selective in your movements and understand that some movements are better than others for improving speed, strength, and explosiveness. Coaching advice on conjugate. I mean, I've made dozens of videos on conjugate. I have a whole playlist dedicated to conjugate. So you're going to have to be a lot more specific than that. Like, I mean, I could probably write a whole book on conjugate. Is it okay to drink a lot of Coke Zero in terms of health? The data would suggest it's fine. Do you recommend ice cream fitness for beginning strength? Yeah, I mean, thousands and thousands of people ran that program since I put it out. I put it out in 2012. It's coming up on, it's going to have been out 13 years this coming year, right? It's time proven. It's time proven. There are large numbers of people out there who've given testimonials on it and endorsed that it works. I wrote it all that time ago. It's been proven effective. So of course, right? I think it's very good. But if it's not purely a strength program, it really is intended to make you big. No, Chief, I didn't say that I'm considering doing a bodybuilding show. I said there's a lot of people who want me to. I didn't say I'm considering one. Emma, if you want coaching, you should probably come on now while I'm running it at a special. You'll save money in the long term. In the past, they said higher reps for forearms, calves, and abs, all their endurance muscles. Is true or not? No. Why would that be true? That's actually been studied and found that things like calves, for example, they don't benefit any differently from any sort of training that other muscles do. All right. The same things that stimulate other muscles will stimulate calves. Are they really endurance muscles? And if that was the case, then why wouldn't all humans just do nothing but high reps other than 1% of the population? I mean, since all of our muscles are endurance-based as a species. Yeah, Chief says Ice Cream Fit is more or less a bodybuilding program. Yep. I mean, even Izzy said that years ago when he was asked to review it on Powerlifting to Win. He even said that. He's like, this is a bodybuilding program. It's a beginning bodybuilder program. Emma, so we'll think about it. A couple things. It kind of started when I was picking names, and I guess the Hodge twins right around that time called Ian McCarthy. They called him Pop-Tart Fitness. So that started rolling around in my head because I made my channel, I think, like that same month, my original channel. And I knew Ian back then, so I was in a circle. We all kind of chatted together. So I came up with that because I'm like, oh, ice cream. I'm like, I scream fitness. So it's a play on words, right? So if you say it out loud instead of ice cream, I scream fitness. So if you say ice cream fitness, bam. That was how it came to be. But it was also that because the Hodge twins had called Ian Pop-Tart Fitness, because he was promoting eating Pop-Tarts. And I'm like, let's just run with it. Does holding weights grow forearms? There's no stretcher movements or isometric. Oh, man. To some extent, yeah. Well, I think I did, but Chief, the name existed before I did any of the little bit of ice cream eating. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like I was eating ice cream in videos anywhere, okay, and then made the channel. That was literally the name of the channel when I made the channel in the very first video. So it's kind of like you're talking about a chicken or the egg scenario. The only problem with using it today is, how do I put this? A few key points. Number one, me being able to try to eat ice cream in moderation was kind of something I was trying to work through because of my own childhood. Because I mentioned I had a binge issue with ice cream related to my childhood trauma. So I want to be clear. I wanted to go through a phase in my life to where I could try to moderate ice cream because of my own bad relationship with food due to my childhood. So there was that, and ice cream is very specific to that. So, I mean, if we want to go into a deeper psychology, do I have a childhood trauma that is tied into ice cream that I've discussed in detail? Yes. So we have that factor. But the other thing to think about, because I promote people eating no junk food these days, and I have for a long time, I think refined sugars and stuff shouldn't be consumed. I don't know that I want to promote the ice cream name in there, because if I take my current position, and our positions change over time, like we're allowed to change our viewpoints and things in our morals, right? We're allowed to as human beings as we evolve. Right? We are allowed to do this as people. I don't want to be hypocritical in that regard, right? Because if I change my viewpoint and I do hold a certain moral view that as a society, we need to kind of push people away from eating junk food for the betterment of society. Okay. And I've gone further in that direction over the years, especially the more I've had to think about health and fitness and leanness and social issues, and seen people die. Like people I know have died of diabetes since I've become a YouTuber. Like I know multiple people who died from it, like personally in real life and things like that. And some of these preventable diseases, I also have to step back and temper that and go, do I even want to try to promote, we can just moderate these things, or do I want to promote, hey, we should push away from junk foods as a society, in terms of harm prevention. So there's also that moral aspect, right? There's that moral aspect to consider of the message that I want to put out, given how I view these things as I've evolved and changed over time as a person. Right? And we're all going to do hypocritical things. It's human nature. Okay, let's be clear. Every human being on earth is a hypocrite. But when we personally see something that we're doing that say, man, that might be more hypocritical than I'm willing to accept. So again, the point of then, do I use that name today in that context? Or would I personally, it's not a matter of do you think it makes me a hypocrite? It's a matter of would I personally view it as hypocritical in my own behavior? And if that's the case, then I need to be careful of that. And that's for all of us. It's just about having your own moral code. What's acceptable to you as a person. What are you willing to compromise on? What are your core values? And for me, even though it would be a good marketable name, I personally feel like at this point in my life to use the ice cream fitness thing still would be, maybe a compromise of my own personal values. Enough so that I've got to rethink it. Right? All right. Coach, do you still perform power shrugs or was? No, I don't do power. I did some strict shrugs this week with 315, but those were strict and I strapped up for them. I want to try to get that up stronger. I wouldn't mind getting those up to like 500. Michael says, good afternoon, Coach Blaha. Do you have an updated take on behind the neck presses? I don't know that I do. I've always thought behind the neck presses are good exercise. I've said that many times. Right? I think that it's risky for some people, but if you have the shoulder mobility to do it pain-free and you don't have any problems with it, I think it's a good exercise. Okay. How's that for a statement on it? I did a wrist curl with 95 pounds. Doesn't know it's not that good. All right. How fast can you gain muscle mass back on muscle memory? Let's say, Simon, we don't have exact data. So you're asking faster than you gained it the first time. We know that. But if you're asking me literally for specifics, I don't think anyone can answer that. Is Juggernaut Fitness an inspiration? No, the Juggernaut Fitness was based entirely on the old Juggernaut original. Keep in mind, dude, I'm an OG YouTuber. So do you remember one of the most viral original YouTube videos of all time? I'm talking years before I made a channel. One of the most viral videos that have ever been in YouTube history when you go back further than a decade. You start going back 15 years, right? Oh, it's a juggernaut. That was my inspiration. I think you said hanging leggers are the best core exercise to support the squat. Why is that? It's a weak core. Specifically, Dave Tate has said the same thing, actually. So why? Because it also trains the hip flexors while concurrently training the abs, which can carry over to the squat. How's that? It's a great exercise for improving your squat. So, how you like them apples? Emma, I don't understand your question. No, I don't do any cookie cutter programs for my coaching. Question, if you get a hard flu, you have the same muscle mass in the first few days. Why do you have less strength? Is it because of total fatigue, dehydration, things like that? Yeah, your nervous system is going to have fatigue and you're going to be dehydrated. Medi, no, I already said that's not strong. What's your opinion on some name I have never heard of in my entire life? Fitness influencer critiques. My opinion is I don't know if that's a real thing or a word you just made up. That's my entire opinion. Never heard of it until this exact moment. Until this exact moment, I have never read that word. Pinquiz 07. No, this is the first time I've ever seen that name written in my entire life. That's my opinion. What are the principles of? It's not jogger, it's juggernaut. Juggernaut. What do you mean? It's a name. Well, the principles are it's a different word for my business and channel name when I used to use the name. That's it. That's the only difference. All right. Oh, we use a dumbbell? I don't know. I thought you were talking about a standing barbell curl. I have no idea. I don't know that. Sorry, Betty. Now I've got to do math in my head. I don't know. So what stance are you in when you do it? Like, explain the exercise. You can't just say a wrist curl. Would you ever plan to do a meet and greet? I have no plans to do a meet and greet anytime in the near future. All right. How much omega-3 is optimal dosage? I take 3 grams a day. Which omega-3? Omega-3 is a term for multiple different fatty acids because you'd be very specific. And again, optimal for what purpose? I remember the Mike Chang ads from all the OG fitness videos. It was on every video. Yeah. 6-pack shortcuts. That was it. I remember 6-pack shortcuts. Mike Chang. It was all the rage. We all probably made a lot of money off his ads in all our videos back in the day, too. Yes, I did. Old school one-arm dumbbell wrist curls. Okay, Mehdi, that still doesn't tell me what you did. Okay. I'm going to need you to be specific. Like the type of wrist curl I do or a different type of wrist curl? 3 grams combined, that's a lot actually. So 3 grams of EPA and DHA is you're getting into prescription levels. You don't need anywhere near that much for brain or any of that. But could it improve your lipid profile? Like if you have high triglycerides, then you're getting into the amounts doctors prescribe to lower that. So definitely some potential heart health benefits. I mean, I take 2 grams and that's on my own, but you are keeping in mind you're dealing with medical intervention doses at that point. Probably no point to that if you don't have slightly out of range lipids or you don't use anabolics or anything. Right? Yeah, Emma, that's not going to work. Free coaching is completely useless. People won't do what you tell them. Right? In fact, I find if you give a major discount to a client with a hardship, they're having extremely low compliance. They are your worst clients, 9 out of 10 times. So a few exceptions. They're exceptions don't make the norm though. So I can tell you right now, someone who can't afford coaching, who won a free sweepstakes for coaching, the odds that they would be one of the worst clients you ever had who won't commit is extremely high. So it'd actually be really bad for your business because they're not going to get results. I'm just telling you as someone who's been doing this for years. Most of the people who I took hardships on and gave extreme discounts to turned out to be really, really terrible clients. What's the average length of training with your clients? There is no average. There is no average. I mean, because if I were to say, okay, I've had plenty of clients who signed on for a month and disappeared at 2 weeks and paid for a full month. All right. Just completely disappeared. So let's say I've had 30 of those. And then I have clients who've been on for 4 or 5 years. So how without me being a statistician, how am I supposed to determine an average? I mean, I'd have to pull up a lot of data and plug it into, I guess, a spreadsheet. So if you were to ask me then to ballpark and not just a random guess, average length is about a year. All right. Do you train the muscle above the shin bone? Some say, do you train the muscle above the shin bone? You talking about the tibulus? No, I don't train it. What's your strongest one-arm pull-up? I've never done one. So I'm going to say 0. Mehdi, I'm a coach and then social media influencer. I mean, technically, you're asking what is put on my taxes. Like what is listed as my profession. A strength coach and social media influencer. What's on my W-2s and 1099s? All right. You're being too vague. I've given detailed opinions on Dr. Matt Winning, the good and the bad. So do we want to discuss some of the trendy nonsense, or do you want to discuss his really good stuff? Because he's got a mix of both, right? He's got a lot of trendy stuff, hides a lot of stuff behind paywalls, does a lot of silly, trendy nonsense, but he also has some really, really, really good stuff in there too that's phenomenal. How's that for an answer? Chief, no, there is not. I think Bromley's a bit overrated, in my opinion. He seemed to have a go at me. He didn't like the fact that I deadlift like a power lifter. That like bothered him a lot. Like so much that he called me out for deadlifting like a power lifter when I've broken multiple state records in sport of powerlifting in the state of Texas. Maybe I deadlift like a power lifter because I've competed in powerlifting. But he felt that was a reason to call me out at one time, apparently. So what does that tell you about him? You know, I can't take someone too seriously who did that. Well, no shit, Alex. A power lifter deadlifts like a power lifter, and there's a need to call this out as a problem. Cool. All right. Yep. I mean, that's how else should I take it? I mean, what else can I say about that? And I'm watching a guy basically doing all his deadlifts are with figure eight straps and deadlift suits, and it's just like, okay, whatever, dude. I mean, I would clown that and go, that's not a dead. I don't know what you're doing. But he said, well, that's a strong man deadlift. It's like, well, you know, alrighty then. Simon says 30 years ago, almost no women trained in the gym. Now they make up 50% of the gym. I don't know that it was almost no. It was always a significant amount. How's your grip right now? I did a 585 pull this week and held it just fine at the top. No problems, right? I held it at lockout. No grip issues and set it down on the ground. So it's decent. Could it be better? That grip could probably be better. But it held okay there. I mean, I would always like it to be better than that still, obviously. Right? In an ideal world, we would want that. Hey, Jason, do you think you can overhead press? Do I think I can currently overhead press my body weight? As a push press, or do you mean a strict press? If you want me to be completely honest, I don't think that I can right now. I think that if I tried to strict press my current body weight at the moment, I think it would fail miserably. But at least I'm honest about it. I've strict pressed 227 and a half before years ago, though, when I really pushed the strict press a lot. I am training overhead press again, though, now, and I'm doing a lot of incline, so it should carry over. It may come back up, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did on camera. I did 225 at least 8 or 9 different times on camera back in that same time period. But I haven't really trained or pushed the lift, so it's just not there. You know, plus I deal with some of the shoulder range of motion issues with the lockout. So even if I did do it, people would say it's not legit. If I went to my fullest range of motion with it, people would just say, "Oh, no, it wouldn't count." My bench press and my incline are both stronger than they were back when I was doing that overhead press. Significantly stronger. Yeah. Yeah, I did 225 for 10 all pause. And then 2 weeks ago, and then this week I did 275 for a double at 45 degrees. And those were pause reps. Right. But yeah, I don't think I could, honestly, I don't think I could press 200 at this exact moment. Do you know something? I am leaning in the direction of they're ineffective. Yeah. You made great. Yeah, my chest gains are good. Like we saw the pose today in the community tab and on Facebook. Well, you saw the footage too, maybe, because it was the screenshots from the vlog today. Yeah. All right, guys, we're at 15 minutes in. I have a bunch of stuff. I have to do a call coming up here later. And so I have more work I've got to get done. So time to go ahead and wind this down. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I love all of you guys and gals, and I'll talk to you next time.